If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is a marketing genius. David Meerman Scott spotted the real-time marketing revolution in its infancy and wrote 5 books about it, including The New Rules of Marketing and PR, with more than 400,000 copies sold in English and available in 29 languages, from Albanian to Vietnamese. Now, David says that the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of superficial online communications. Tech-weary and bot-weary people are hungry for true human connection. Organizations have learned to win by developing what David calls a fanocracy, which, by the way, is the subject of his recent Wall Street Journal bestseller. By tapping into the mindset that relationships with customers are far more important than the products they actually sell to them. He's a massive live music fan, having been to 790 live shows since he was 15 years old. He's passionate about the Apollo lunar program, and he loves to surf, but admits that he isn't very good at it. However, despite that, he's one of my favorite marketing gurus. David, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Thank you, Susan. It's so great to be here. And you called me a marketing genius. Thank you for that. That's kind of you to say.
Well, I believe it. And
Thank
if
you.
somebody else says it, from what I understand, then it has to be true. You can't say it about yourself, but if somebody else says it, then it's got some
I'll write
good.
it down and remember it.
Susan Friedman said.
Yes, exactly.
David, before we really dig into this whole concept of fanocracy, let's first understand what or who exactly a fan is.
For the last 5 years, my daughter Reiko and I, who happens to be my co-author on our book Fanocracy, and I wanted to really dig into this idea of who or what is a fan. And we interviewed hundreds of people about what they're a fan of. We interviewed dozens of companies that have grown fans. We interviewed neuroscientists about what's going on in our brains when we become fans. And this is actually really important for everybody who's listening in, because we can all build a base of fans. And here's what it is. And it actually comes from neuroscience. All humans, every single one of us, is hardwired to want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. You mentioned I've been to nearly 800 live music shows. 75 of those are Grateful Dead concerts. I've seen Grateful Dead 75 times, starting when I was 17 years old. When I'm at a Grateful Dead concert, I'm with my tribe. I'm with my tribe of people. It's fabulous. And I can turn to anybody there and have a conversation, even if I've never met them. What you're doing with this podcast right here, Susan, and with your other work, is you're building a tribe of like-minded people who become your fans because you're providing them valuable information. That's what we can do as thought leaders, as authors, as people who are serving clients, is build a tribe of like-minded people. Then you have fans. And when you have fans, then those people will stay with you for the long haul. They're not going to leave if something cheaper or faster or better comes along, because they're your fans.
I know you yourself have hundreds and thousands, or thousands and millions maybe, of personal fans, but how did that influence your research in writing the book?
It was a big part of it because I've seen fandom from lots of different perspectives. You did mention that one of my books, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, has sold 400,000 copies in English, and it's in 29 other languages. I've written a total of 11 books, and it's really hard to tell how many books I've sold, but I would guess it's just about 1 million copies in various languages and editions and versions, whether it's ebook or audiobook or print or whatever. And every single day I get 20, 30, 40 people who reach out to me through email, through social networks, and say, thank you for writing the book, or David, I'm your fan, or David, please connect with me, or whatever it might be. I've seen it from that perspective, and I'm very conscious of always returning an email or a social connection that somebody makes with me. It's important for me to do that. And I've also seen fandom from the perspective of being a fan of a number of things, of live music, of the Apollo Lunar Program, of vintage Land Rovers, of surfing, and some other things. And I've seen how some people and some organizations don't treat their fans right. Having seen it from both sides, I found that it was really important for me to, as we were writing this book and thinking about this whole idea of what we term a fanocracy, that I wanted to be able to explain from various different perspectives. And the reason I involved my daughter Reiko as my co-author is that obviously, since she's my daughter, we're different generations and we're different genders, and a middle-aged white guy, and my wife is Japanese. Reiko was born in Tokyo, so she's mixed race. I'm very much sort of went down the liberal arts path. Reiko did a neuroscience degree at Columbia University and just graduated from medical school, and now is an emergency room resident at Boston Medical Center. I'm a fan of the Grateful Dead and live music. Reiko's a fan of Harry Potter and Comic-Con. So we are vastly different, but we realized that our ideas about fandom were exactly the same. It was wonderful to be writing that book with her.
It's fun, isn't it? I haven't written a whole book with my daughter, but she and I wrote a chapter in an anthology together, and it just gave me so much joy. I'm sure you're the proud papa of your daughter in many ways. That's wonderful. Talk to us about why you believe that any business can grow as a result of cultivating their fandom.
Our thesis going into the beginning of this project 6 years ago, was that we believed, starting from the perspective of being a fan of live music, Grateful Dead, Harry Potter, coming from the perspective of a millennial mixed race woman and a baby boomer man, that our thesis was that any organization, any person has the potential to build fans. We wanted to look for examples in a wide variety of different places. We looked at nonprofits, government agencies, business-to-business companies, software companies, doctors, lawyers, dentists, authors, musicians, and it turns out that every single one of those categories has the capability of building fans. And the more obscure and interesting, and where people said, no, you can't possibly build fans in that business, we found companies that build fans or people who built fans in that business. So I'll give you a couple examples. We found a government agency with over 50 million fans. You can be walking down the street of any city on the planet and not be surprised that somebody walks towards you with a NASA t-shirt on. NASA is a government agency with millions and millions and millions of fans. We found a company that does automobile insurance that has over 1 million fans. They're called Haggerty. They do classic car automobile insurance. And they meet with their fans who are fans of classic cars at classic car events around the world. They have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. They have a drivers club with 650,000 members. And people love Haggerty. They're the largest now classic car insurance company on the planet. And they built their entire business on fandom. I spoke with the entrepreneurial owner of the company, McKeel Haggerty, and he built the entire business on fandom. And he freely admitted that because he said, I can't build this business on being a low-cost provider or build this business based on trying to spend more money on ads than everybody else. I built it by building fans. And so every single person who's listening in on this, if you focus on building a fandom or what we call a fanocracy, that absolutely has potential to drive the book sales and the consulting engagements and your business forward, because people want to do business with somebody that they're a fan of. They want to be part of that tribe of like-minded people.
So are there some rules that we need to be following in order to nurture that fandom?
We found about a dozen different ways that organizations can build fans. Each one is a chapter in the book, and a number of them are pretty practical. Other ones are more kind of philosophical, but I'll touch on a couple of examples. One of them is something I originally learned from the Grateful Dead, and that is give gifts to people without any expectation of anything in return. And this is something that a lot of people have trouble with, especially a lot of creative people have trouble with. The idea of giving things away with no expectation of anything in return. So I learned that from the Grateful Dead because they were remarkable in that they allowed fans to bring recording gear into their shows, still do, by the way, and record their concerts. You could bring professional level recording gear into the show, set up microphones, turn on your tape deck and record any Grateful Dead show that you wanted to. They even gave you a special place to sit right behind the mixing board if you wanted to do that. Every other band said, no way, you're stealing if you do that. The Grateful Dead said, sure, why not? Feel free to record the music. The only rule is you can't sell it. You can trade it, you can give it away, you can use it for your own enjoyment, you just can't sell it. Millions and millions and millions of people around the world were exposed to the Grateful Dead's music because of the free music that was circulating initially on cassette tapes in the early days and then later on now in MP3 files. Every other band said no. The Grateful Dead said, sure, why not? Let's do that. That's something that we should all keep in mind, that I'm not saying give away your book, but I am saying give away things that have tremendous value, but don't coerce people in the ways that you give it away. And what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of organizations will give a piece of content away, a chapter in a book, let's say. But the only way you can get that content is if you first give an email address. That's a coercion technique. That's not giving something away completely for free with no expectation of anything in return, because you're actually asking for something first before you give away that content. My recommendation is, wherever possible, give things away completely free so that people will spread your ideas like the Grateful Dead. They'll talk about you. They'll share your stuff on social networks. They'll point to the link where they can get something to download. I'm fortunate that I learned that idea from the Grateful Dead a long time ago, decades ago. And when I first started my writing career, I followed that advice of the Grateful Dead, essentially. I did a free ebook. It was called The New Rules of PR. You may have even read it back in the early days, Susan. And it originally came out in, I believe it was 2004. It got 50,000 downloads the first month and over 1 million downloads the first year, and directly led to my first book deal with Wiley, because they said, wow, if you can do that, we want you. And then all of those people who downloaded it, I didn't know who they were because I wasn't collecting email addresses. But those people then said, well, what's David up to now? Oh, he's got a book, The New Rules of Marketing PR. That's an extension of this free ebook he gave me. That's cool. I'll buy one. And that put The New Rules of Marketing PR on the Business Week bestseller list 6 months in a row. And we sold out of print run, out of print run, out of print run in the early days of that book. And it's now in the 7th edition. In May 2020, the 7th edition came out. So it's been a bit of a juggernaut for me. It keeps selling through the years. It's used in hundreds of universities. And it all started because I gave away content for free with no expectation of anything in return.
That's phenomenal. I didn't realize it was in the 7th edition. I know I've got the 1st edition, and I think I've got the 2nd or the 3rd, but if we're up to 7, I need to catch up.
7th edition. The 1st edition is a collector's item. Hang on to that one.
Okay. Let's go deeper into this whole idea of giving stuff away, because there are two thoughts here. Number one is, I know that many of my authors have said, well, I don't want to give it away because if I give it away, they're not going to buy it, which obviously you've proved is not the case. But then the other thing that you mentioned was asking for somebody's email address, the lead magnet, the ethical bribe, whatever you want to call it. That's got a purpose because, let's say, I'd like to build my list so that I can market to these people, let them in on other things that I'm doing, which if I didn't know who they were, I wouldn't be able to reach them. Talk to us a bit more about that.
This is a philosophical discussion, not unlike the current political environment in the United States. You've got people on one side who very strongly believe that their position is correct and have difficulty seeing the other position. And then you've got people on the other side who feel the same way, but completely the opposite opinion. And no way am I going to talk about politics right now, but you've got two sides. And it's a polarizing environment if you're living in the United States, what's going on right now. The same thing is absolutely true about this idea of content. Do you give it away completely for free, like the Grateful Dead and like David Meerman Scott, and like many other people, by the way? Or do you use a coercion technique? Do you put a roadblock in front of that free content by insisting that somebody give you something first before you give them your content? And it is a philosophical discussion. It is evolution versus creationism. And you believe one or you believe the other. And I can try to convince you of my opinion, but if you've already made up your mind, it's very hard for you to see the other side of that argument, whether it's Republican versus Democrat, creationism versus evolution, or give it away completely for free with no expectation of anything in return, no email address required, or you want to build a list. I believe strongly, and it's made me millions of dollars, that if you build a base of fans by giving away a ton of things, those fans will support you year after year after year. They will want to buy every book you write. They will want to buy your audiobook and your hardcover book at the same time, which a lot of people have told me they've done in my case. They'll introduce you to their company to have you come and speak at their event because they like you that much. But some people believe that you have to actually beat somebody up to get them to buy something from you. You have to send them email after email after email with offer after offer after offer before they'll buy something from you. You have to put them into your click funnels or whatever the heck they're called, where people fill out a form and then you sell them something for 97 cents and then you sell them something for $2.86 or whatever the formulas are that people have worked out. And then that's how you end up making money. And I do believe that it is a religious discussion that we're having right now. The religion of totally free with no expectation of anything in return, no email address required, or you've got to build people into some kind of funnel approach where you have to coerce them in every step of the way. And yes, there are hybrid approaches that are a combination of both, but I do think that what we're talking about here is a religious discussion, and there is absolutely no question which side of this religious discussion I sit on.
I can see that. I can hear it. Your passion for all of this and everything that you do is truly infectious. Talk to us more about the idea of that passion that builds your fan.
This was actually one of the most surprising things that we found when we were doing our research, my daughter Reiko and I, on our book Fanocracy, is we spoke, as I mentioned earlier, with hundreds and hundreds of people about what they're a fan of. And people are fans of all kinds of interesting things. It might be something that has become more than a hobby, whether that's bird watching or kayaking, or in my case, surfing or whatever it might be. It might be a particular sports team that they absolutely love, or a sport that they like to play, a team sport or an individual sport. It might be a company that they do business with. They become just a massive fan of that company. It could be an author. It can be a musician. It can be that they love to do art, or they love to birdwatch, or whatever it is. It's so interesting. People are fans. I mean, one of the most rabid fan bases recently I learned about, and I've talked with a bunch of people, are Peloton fans. Oh my God, they become rabid fans of Peloton. If you go to them and you say, hey, I've got something just like Peloton, but the monthly fee is half the price, none of them will move because they love Peloton that much. These people are all unbelievably passionate about the thing that they love. In my case, Grateful Dead, surfing. My daughter's case, Harry Potter, Comic-Con. And we, my daughter and I, and many of the other people we spoke with, celebrate that passion with the world. And we share on social media what we're passionate about. We talked in person with people about what we're passionate about. Every single one of the 11 books I wrote, I think except with the exception of one, I've managed to slip references to the Grateful Dead in. And one book I wrote is actually called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. I wrote that with Brian Halligan, who's the CEO of HubSpot, and Bill Walton, the famous NBA Basketball Hall of Famer. By the way, I've seen the Grateful Dead 75 times. Brian Halligan, my co-author, probably 150 times. Bill Walton, NBA Basketball Hall of Famer. If you've ever seen him commentating on a game, you know that he's all about the Grateful Dead. 850 Grateful Dead concerts he's seen. Anyway, what I'm getting around to here is that we're passionate about the things that we love. Everybody who's listening in on this probably has similar passions for something that you love. But what Reiko and I noticed is that many people are afraid to share what they're passionate about in their business life. In other words, they might have on social media, on LinkedIn is their business social media, and that's just business. We are only doing business on LinkedIn. This is where I talk about business. And then they might have another social network, Instagram, whatever it is. This is where we have fun. It's time to have fun now. And they build a big fat brick wall between the thing they're passionate about, the thing that they love to do, and their business. Yet what we found is that the people who share what they love, share what they're passionate about in their private life, in their business world, have attracted way more fans than those who don't, because passion is infectious, because people gravitate to people who are passionate. And you don't have to share the same fandoms as that person. The fact that I love surfing means that I'm attracted to somebody who loves skiing because I can understand that. The fact that I love the Grateful Dead, I'm attracted to somebody who loves classical music or who loves ballet or who loves art or who loves whatever it is because I can understand that passion. We met a dentist. His name is Dr. John Marashi. And Dr. Marashi is an interesting example of this because I met him about 2.5 years ago, when I got off the stage after speaking for 2 hours at a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event. And I've spoken at Tony Robbins Business Mastery events now since 2014. So as we're recording this, 6 years. And so this is about 2 years ago. And I had talked about these ideas of passion and so on. And Dr. Marashi met me after I got off the stage and he goes, David, this idea of passion, sounds great, but I'm a dentist. Give me a break. What are you talking about? I can't build fans. And I said, well, what do you love to do, Dr. Marashi? He goes, I love to skateboard. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Why don't you showcase your skateboarding in context with your dentistry? And he said, I'm a dentist in Southern California. There's 10,000 other dentists in Southern California. I mean, it's so hard to break out. Well, yeah, but skateboarding, that'll do it. He actually, unlike most people, actually took me up on it. And what he did is he said, I'm going to share that I love skateboarding. So the first thing he did is he hung on the wall of his dental practice a whole bunch of skateboards. So you walk down the hallway of a dental practice, and in the lobby, near the waiting room, there's skateboards on the wall. He'll actually skateboard from one examination room to another examination room. On his website for his dental practice, he has pictures of him skateboarding. He has an Instagram with, last time I checked, 14,000 followers. A dentist with 14,000 followers, and many of the photos that he shares are of him skateboarding. He contacted me out of the blue a couple of months ago and said, David, thank you. This idea of making me the skateboarding dentist, it's fabulous. Now I'm not one of 10,000 dentists in Southern California. I'm the skateboarding dentist. And he said, I've calculated that this single idea that you shared with me, David, has increased my business by 30% in the last year, because I can actually measure how many people have come to me because they heard of me as the skateboarding dentist. And those aren't skateboarders, by the way. Those are just people attracted to the passion that Dr. Marashi has for skateboarding. You know, do you want the dentist who's just business, or do you want the dentist who likes to skateboard? And that's true of all of us. When we can share the things that we love, when we can share the things that we're passionate about, it makes us a way, way more interesting person. So, Susan, what are you a fan of?
I love yoga.
Yoga. How cool is that? And tell me a little bit about why you love yoga.
So I love yoga. I've been doing it for the last 40 years. I started it in South Africa with my husband, and he dropped out after the first couple of lessons, and I continued to the point where I taught it, and now I just do it because I enjoy it.
Awesome.
So that's
awesome. And do you share your love of yoga with your tribe of people?
You know what? I don't, but I think I am definitely going to give that one a try, because why not?
Give it a try. People just gravitate to. They're naturally attracted to people who are passionate. And you show passion anyway for what you do. You know, you have passion for helping people to get their books out into the world. That's fabulous. But maybe a little bit of yoga thrown in there too.
Do it standing on your head. How's that?
There you go. We can write a book standing on our head.
David, how about sharing with our listeners how they can learn more about the book, buy the book, learn more about your services, become a David Meerman Scott fan? Take it away.
If you want to learn more about Fanocracy, www.fanocracy.com. We've got some videos, infographics, a bunch of stuff that you can download at that site. I'm David Meerman Scott. I use my middle name professionally because I'm the only David Meerman Scott in the world. So if you Google me, you will find me. On most of the social networks, I am DM Scott. That's DMSCOTT.
Excellent. And if you were to leave our listeners with just that golden nugget, you've shared so much with us, but I always like to get a little bit more for my money here. What would that be, David?
I have already shared it, and I just want to repeat it one more time. And that's the idea that passion is infectious. And I'm talking about the passion that you have for something in your life, whatever it is that you love. People want to know that. People are attracted to that. People want to do business with that. So share that yoga, share that Grateful Dead fandom, share that Harry Potter fandom, whatever it is that you have, we want to know about it.
Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you, I've got your Grateful Dead book in my library. So just so that you know that.
Awesome. That's great.
You've been amazing, David. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing your passion, your wisdom. And I knew it would be amazing, and it was beyond amazing, whatever that word is. So thank you. Thank you all for taking time out of your precious day to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much book marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.